Hey guys, welcome back to A&J Education. In today's video, we have a very special guest, Ollie Scott, who is the master of gap years, and he's here to talk about gap year. Ollie, great to have you back with us.
Cheers, thank you. How are you doing, Sonny?
I'm good. I'm a bit worse for wear, but it's seeing you has made my day. So,
Yeah.
Ollie, listen, if you're okay with me kind of sharing the backstory. Your great success story now. You graduated with first class degree from Downing College, Cambridge in history. You came third overall in your year of a couple hundred students. Massively impressive. However, only relatively recently, you failed to get into Oxford. You decided to take a gap year, and
it was,
that's something my father would describe as sort of.
These were dire times. It was
dire times,
rock bottom.
And some of my family members, especially in India, they'll say, "Hey, listen, this guy brings shame to his family. He's not in work, not at university, not studying. So what's he doing?"
Cool. I much prefer the earlier videos. They're a bit. No.
So just on a more serious note, why did you decide? Just talk us through some of your thinking behind deciding to do gap year. What did you actually get up to on your gap year?
No, so I applied to Oxford year 13, and was quite disappointed when I didn't get in. I think it's fairly natural. If you have to do, it's a lot of work, as we talked about applying to Oxford, so it can feel a bit disappointing afterwards. But I'd also applied to, I think, Exeter, so I did have a space somewhere else. I kind of just kept plodding along, did my A-levels, with the kind of idea from around January that I might well take a gap year if things panned out well in A-levels, and they did. And then, during the summer I started planning what I was going to do. Ideally, if you're going to do a gap year, you could start planning even earlier, which would be brilliant. Mainly I did some sort of hospitality, waiting work, did a bit of tutoring, met Sonny, that was a real highlight. And then I went traveling in South America, which was quite kind of Yapgar sort of thing. Really enjoyed it. It was very good fun. And then obviously at the start of it, I was reapplying, so applying to Cambridge, and then got in around January, I think.
No, nice.
Oh, I also spent a month in France as well. I forgot about that. I did a language course there, which was quite good fun. But yeah.
And so. It sounds like you sort of spent half your gap year saving up money and then the other half drinking it away.
Yeah. Well, it goes a lot further in South America. There's a lot more drinking you can do for your pounds. I'm quite fortunate, and I live in London, so I could stay in London, and there's lots of work around and not have to pay a huge amount of rent or anything. So it worked out well for me. Like, not everyone will be as fortunate or able to do that. And if you want to do a gap year, obviously, you might want to plan accordingly. But it's definitely doable. A couple of my friends moved to London, got a job, saved up money, and then went travelling with me. And they were living on their own. So it's definitely doable.
By the way, if any of you watching this looking for gap year opportunities, myself, other colleagues at A&J Education, we always have companies, organizations looking for volunteers. Sometimes they'll even pay you, kind of cover your costs and pay you a salary, looking to recruit for the summer or for the year or for a couple of months. So if you want to, just drop me an email, drop us a line. We'll be happy to put you in touch with some organizations if you kind of want to spend your year productively. But Ollie, just before we get into this whole gap year conversation, you failed to get into Oxford and then you got into Cambridge the next year.
Yeah.
So was it just luck, or did you prepare in a different way?
Probably was a bit of luck. I mean, you're always going to want to say it was all me, but it may well have been a bit of luck. I don't think it was entirely. If you don't get into Oxford or anywhere, any interview, any job, I'd immediately request feedback, which you might not want to hear at the time, but I definitely would. And that was very helpful. So there were things I kind of learned that I could have done better. I think a couple of those would be one, researching the course a lot. I think with Oxbridge there's a tendency, because it's Oxbridge, you think, well, it's going to be great, I'll go there. You just sort of put one down, oh, Oxford might be really good for history, so I'll apply. and you're very busy in year 13. And to be honest, I didn't research the course enough. And when they sort of asked in an interview what you wanted to do if you got here, I sort of just said I'd want to do X, Y, Z. But I wasn't really able to give kind of specific papers or anything like that. So I think kind of doing that would be really helpful. The other thing I did more of, which I mentioned in the last video, was just sort of stopping, taking a break, not reading as much, but trying to read a bit more analytically. So yeah, just get your feedback if you don't get in, or if you're brave enough to ask someone who didn't get in, ask them maybe what their feedback is. If you can find out, it might be helpful. And then yeah, maybe just step back and reassess.
No, so it sounds like you did take that feedback and spend a lot of time preparing. So I think you've been a bit modest there, but also acknowledging that luck is involved.
Yeah, you never know.
No. Okay, look, just coming back to gap year. So what would you say are the pros and cons of doing a gap year?
Cons. Well, I don't know why I went straight for the cons. Cons, if you're, for example, medicine or maths, I know you can sometimes be dissuaded if you're doing sciences. I know people who've done them anyway, so I'm sure that's fine. You might want to just go straight into university. Obviously, taking a year, especially maybe if you took a year this pandemic and you wanted to go travelling, perhaps that was kind of a bit up in the air. Yeah, maybe you just want to go straight into it. I don't think there are that many cons though if you can do things properly. One, you don't have to do a gap year before university, you could do one afterwards. I think talking about kind of future job applications, it can be very helpful if you've actually got some work experience in a field, ideally actually out into the world. That'd be really great. So if you're going to do a gap year, try and do it somewhat properly. But I mean, hopefully, it'll sound really cliche, you'll leave a bit more well-rounded. But yeah, just be aware that gap years are sometimes quite a fortunate thing. You might not be able to do it if your situation doesn't allow for it. Hopefully, if you really want to do something, you'll be able to find a way.
Cool. All right. And speaking for history, did you do anything during your gap year that later helped you with your university reapplication?
I didn't do anything. I didn't work in an archive or a museum or anything like that. I'm not even sure how you would go about doing that. There's not as many jobs. I can imagine if you were doing medicine, like you might be able to volunteer somewhere. It'd be a bit easier to get work-related experience. But what it generally allowed me to do is just have a bit more time to kind of read, to visit kind of museums or even like art galleries, go away. If you're able to go abroad somewhere or able to see a different city, maybe you studied the Russian Revolution. If you're able to go to Moscow, that could be very interesting. Or is it called Petrograd now? I don't know.
St. Petersburg.
St. Petersburg. There we go. That could be a good idea. But no, I don't think there's a huge amount of directly history related experience. I think you'd be better off trying to find like an actual job or work experience placement.
And then actually working on building up your personal statement, reading and CV building events.
And remember, like, ideally a gap year is not all focused on just reapplying or on just doing something that was bad, but you might want to look further ahead. It's really great when you get to applying to jobs in second, third year, if you've got experience in the workforce that you can talk about. A lot of people won't have done that. So it could put you at quite a big advantage there. So if you see even a slightly bigger picture, you might want to look into those sort of opportunities.
Yeah, or indeed it may be that you do the gap year and you realise actually you found a job that you really enjoy.
Yeah.
And you know what, you don't need a university degree. A uni degree will set you back at least 50-60 grand.
Yeah.
Sterling if you're a UK citizen, or potentially 3 times more if you're international.
Yeah.
And for a lot of jobs, you don't need a university degree. So it's not...
Loads of, I think even law or things like that, which you might consider you need a degree for, you could maybe get a job as a paralegal, and then you can kind of work. They're changing the ways you kind of get into it. You might be able to get in without doing a degree. Same with accountancy or things like that. Loads of jobs. And if you really enjoy it, and you don't need to go to university after 1 year. Like you could do 2-3 sort of years before you go.
we have A&J Education. One of our students this year is 27,
Yeah.
got into sort of King's, UCL St Andrews, Queen Mary, as a mature
Yeah.
student. And in fact, Oxford has a separate college for mature students. So it's not if it happens later in life, it can also happen.
Yeah, and you think you're going to have a pretty incredible personal statement, you'd hope. You're going to have a lot of experience and a lot of things to talk about, so that's only a positive.
No. Cool. Ollie, just before you jump off, any resources, any advice on kind of where you can find information, how to structure your gap year, sort of any tips?
Yeah, I mean, it might be worthwhile if your school, a lot of schools now have a careers advisor. It might be quite low key, but if you're able to get, they might be able to point you in the direction of how you get work. If you know anyone, of course, who's in a job and you can kind of use those connections. I wasn't able to do that, but that might help. Although I would really encourage, if you can just find jobs in the local area, to try and get out a bit. You will have been in education likely for 18 years, and potentially might then be going into a very sort of sheltered job kind of environment, or something completely different, or maybe still into academia. If you could spend a few months doing something else, that would probably be really great. And then try and plan ahead, both for the year and then for later travel and things like that. That'd be my advice. I can't think of any particular resource, but I imagine if you type it into Google, something will come up.
Yeah, I mean, generally speaking, you can sort of find everything on Google. So, cool. Ollie, listen, thanks so much for making time for us. Great tips on the gap year, and thanks for sharing your story.
Thank you very much. Cheers.
All right, cheers, Ollie.